Hello, I'm Deborah Wallace, licensed marriage and family therapist. I want to do a positive reframe on holiday grief. And this I'm inspired by as a therapist. I have almost 25 years I've been practicing therapy, and it's not unusual that every time from this holiday season, starting with Halloween to New Year's, my practice gets extra busy. And it's interesting is forever I didn't even notice the pattern. And then I'd get caught off guard and and I'd feel stressed. And then about 5 years ago, I was like, wait a minute, this is a thing. And now it makes sense. And I talk about a lot about trauma. I do lots of videos. Um, any stressor can potentially become traumatic when we have no safe place to process, express, and make sense of it. And that is why I've done a series called Pause and Process. I'm trying to find ways to make it easy for people to pause and process, because if we don't find these outlets, it becomes traumatic. And trauma then creates a dysregulated nervous system and creates a lot of dis-ease, dysfunction, conflict, health issues, lots of problems. So when I realized, it was creating stress in my family, that all of a sudden I was realizing, oh my gosh, I got to work. I got all that. And then when I started to realize, oh, let's prepare for this. Let's embrace. Let's set more boundaries around my on time and have these discussions with clients and prepare for this period. Because what I have found is we see all these movies and commercials and especially Thanksgiving and Christmas is just loaded with images of joy and family connection. And so if we don't have that in our lives, then it only highlights what we don't have. And then whatever stressors we have, and then we have no one, we're lonely, we have no one to talk to and process this and make sense of it. We suffer alone. Everything gets worse. And that's why a lot of suicides and actually a lot of divorces happen in the new year, and then financial stress. Everyone's trying to keep up with the Joneses and do all these things to make this perfect Christmas. And to be honest, I have a long history of holiday um, triggers. And in my own life, it took me a long time to realize that as holidays got closer, my nervous system just wanted to shut down. I I wanted to do enough to bring magic to my kids, because I knew that what my parents did do for me and create a sense of magic around the holidays did make a difference for me. So I would do enough to do that for my children. Um, Yet when it came to hosting parties, making the presents look perfect, like making foods, having all the meals, I just wanted nothing. My nervous system wanted nothing to do with that. And that actually caused a lot of issues and tension between my children's father, as that was his way of celebrating and giving, and was making these really fancy meals and having people over and wrapping everything perfectly with bows. And for me, that was so stressful. And so, unfortunately, in our relationship, that created a lot of tension, because as he's bringing up all these things that he wants to do to celebrate, I'm having these reactions of panic and dread and no, I don't want that. That is stressing me out. And that took a long time for me to even identify that, because it just, a lot of this is why in all my videos I talk about a lot of, like 85% of our behavior is unconscious. It comes from what's stored in our brainstem, which is anything that happened from 0 to 7, implicit memory, and then any events that happened in our lives that we didn't have any place to process and make sense of, but were overwhelming for our nervous system. Trauma, again, is another way to look at it, is anything that's too much, too fast, too soon, that happens for our nervous system. And so with holidays approaching right now, my schedule's booked, and then I also just went through radiation, as I am recovering from breast cancer. And fortunately, I'm feeling on the getting to the other side of it, yet I'm still undergoing, I'll need to take treatment for over 5 years, and I just had the radiation, which fatigue is very tiring. And so I have so much that I want to write, and I am noticing again, it's the time of the holiday. I'm feeling not holiday cheer, which is normal, actually is my normal. And that's why I kind of wanted to do this video, because it's actually normal to have a lot of mixed emotions, and especially if you've had um, losses. I mean, we miss family members. My mom literally died right around Christmas, so I literally had to bring Christmas to her in her ICU room, and she did not make it to Christmas. And so I did everything in my power to. I knew what brought her love and joy, and so we played the holiday Hallmark movies. She loves those, so we had that playing 24/7. I brought angels, pictures of her loved ones, her stocking with her letter B for her name, and I did everything. And so it's very normal when holidays come, especially the first holiday after a loss, the first year. All those holidays are harder, and 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 it's and I want to talk about death because it's everyone's gonna die. It's just, and so we're all going through that. So we might as well talk about it. I think a lot of people don't want to talk about death because they want to bring up suffering, but it actually does a service to talk about it. So I feel the weight of the world. I feel so much heaviness. So I feel a lot of heaviness, and then I think a lot of us are feeling heavy, even heavier on the things that we feel shame and don't talk about. Because I have to tell you, these last 4 years have been hard for another very hard, difficult reason that I have felt shame and have not wanted to talk about. And I want to, and that's what I see in my sessions. I get to be that place where I hold that space for people to share. And so it's actually easier for me to talk about the cancer and my mother's death, because I don't have shame around those. I didn't, make those happen. Those things happened out of my control. But the things that did happen that I felt like were in my control, I feel shame about, and I have grieved about. And in fact, 2 Christmases ago, I didn't even want to celebrate. So I literally told my family, my siblings, my mother, I'm not interested. Don't invite me to your party because I'm not going to put a happy face on. It was miserable, and I won't share all the details, but one of the big things that I was going through is the last 4 years has been a separation and a divorce, which as a marriage and family therapist was absolutely so gut-wrenching and painful. And knowing that I have all these tools and all these skills, and I did everything that I could, but yet still questioning, did I miss something? Did I do something wrong? What could I have done differently? And being separated from my children for holidays. And that 2 years ago Christmas, I literally played Blue Christmas, that song, Elvis Presley, in all versions. My mom actually had the cassette tape in her car. She only had like 3 cassette tapes, and one of them was Elvis Presley Christmas. And I played that Blue Christmas on repeat for like 2 weeks. And I did such little. I think I did manage a few gifts just for my son and my mother and my daughter. But it was so painful. And it was frustrating when people were like, oh, just enjoy the holidays, or, you're doing the best you can. Like, it's like, great. I think those comments are helpful, and I know they're true. But when anyone is suffering from grief and sadness, actually, I want to show a picture. I've been showing this a lot. I show this a lot of people about depression, and when grief goes on and we don't have a safe place. And this is called my pit of despair. And what happens is the grieving person, or the person depressed, is in a pit, and it is surrounded in darkness. There's no grapples. You can't see anything. And there's these people up here who love you and are shouting down saying, hey, come help, grab this. You could do this. You could try that. Oh, why don't you do that? And as lovely as those, and I know everyone's coming from a good place when they say those things. That only makes the person down here feel worse. Like, great. I am so crappy. I can't even see those things you're talking about. Or, yeah, I've tried those things and they don't work. Thanks. Like, it just feels bad. And then you're bringing everybody else down. Like, I know as I was going through all that separation and divorce, like it was so painful. I did need to talk about it a lot, and I needed help because it was maddening and it was crazy making, and it was so unsettling. And I have therapists, I've seen a few to help me for different stages through this, and I even yeah. So, but the thing that helps the person the most is to actually join them. They actually need someone to sit with them and hold space. You may have heard the phrase holding space. You're not fixing them, you're not giving them advice. You're just like, wow, that is so hard. That makes sense that you're having a hard time celebrating. Because often grief is a signal, and it represents you experience more grief when whatever it is that you lost gave you so much joy and pleasure. And so you fall into this pit of despair, like, what the heck happened? Like, I don't get it. Everybody's looking great and happy, and yet you're down here. And so much of our grief is represents the depth of our love and care for whatever person or ritual or context that we're missing and not having, because we've had it once and we don't have it anymore. And then we often blame ourselves, and then that feels very alone and isolating. And so I really encourage people over the holidays. I even like to say holidays because for me, I get into this daze. My nervous system still gets. I have complex PTSD. I still get there, and often people ask me, "Can you heal complex PTSD?" And it's not. And I often say it's not like a we can wipe it. It's not like a magic wand we can wipe it all away. But what you do is you start to show up for yourself now, and awareness is the first step. You notice the patterns, and then now you get to show up for yourself and help your nervous system feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure consistently enough so that you don't get as triggered. You're not adding, compounding. Because when I felt days before, I'd be like, "What's the matter with me? What the heck? It's the holidays." Whereas now I'm like, "Oh, that's right. This is what happens every time this year. What do I need? Take care of myself so that I can get my vital needs met and show up in the best way." So I encourage people for the holidays, if those movies and those commercials are triggering, turn them off. And that's another thing I'll say. If you can't cure it, curate it. And so, with this is the hard part with media. 24/7, we're bombarded with messages telling us what we should be doing, what it looks like, very judgmental. And we need to be able to set boundaries and protect our well being and preserve our spirit. And so you need to do what you need to do for the holidays to feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. And like I said, 2 years ago, I needed to not participate in holidays. And that's what I needed to do. And this year, um, I have just longed for, a big chunk of time to rest and to process all that has unfolded. It's still not as bad as the other reason why I love my job and why I even love working with kids, because still the worst parts of my life, even what I've been through in the last 4 years, were hard. 11 to 14 was the worst parts of my life. And so I still have to show up for that 11, 14-year-old and everything that happened there, because I didn't have an adult that I could trust that helped me feel safe, seen, soon, secure. So I continue to do that for myself. And that's why, even though these last 4 years, now fifth year, now I have cancer, have been so hard, I'm showing up for myself. And I am. I have the tools and I can do it. And I'm so proud of myself for how well I'm handling this. And in fact, this Christmas, I was starting to feel that tension again about gifts and like Thanksgiving with meals. I'm like, I can't do it. And I just have shared with people, I'm going to give myself a gift this year of grace and space and permission to do what feels right for me. And likely my gifts aren't going to be tangible gifts. I'm likely going to say, hey, what's something you've been wanting to do with me? And let's do that together. My presence will be my gift. I've the the consumerism of Christmas I have so many stories, has always ached my heart when I really think being in the moment, present, and also research shows of, anxieties being in the future, and depression is often being in the past, which again, don't judge when those come up. It's so important to acknowledge and befriend those parts that are suffering and are afraid and are feeling sad. And then as you do that process, you actually are able to get grounded in the moment, in the present. And that's where you experience joy. I'm actually going to end by reading one of my favorite poems on this topic, which is called Joy and Sorrow by Khalil Gibran. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper the sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is it not the lute that soothes your spirit, the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see, in truth, you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you on your board, remember that the other is asleep on your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty and you are at standstill and balanced, when the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. Thank you so much for listening, and I encourage you all to take time to pause, process, listen, and attune to your unique nervous system. Our nervous system is like an instrument that we want to attune to, and when we're in relationships, we want to learn to harmonize. And we can only do that if we can first connect to ourselves. And when we can do that, we can be our best selves. And it is our presence that's the best gift. And there's another quote I love sharing around this time that kids spell love, Love. They spell it with time, Time. So your presence is the best gift. Thank you so much for listening. Take wonderful care.